So this is a rather exciting Mainframers Meetup that we've got planned for you today. But first of all, what is Mainframers?
Hello, hello.
Right. We initially based around London community a long time ago, but now we've gone global thanks to recent events. We're community driven, organized by IBMers, vendors and customers, mainframe customers. We are supported by clients and partners. We have over 500 members and growing, and we like to do in-person and virtual events several times a year, 3 to 4 times a year. But going virtual enables us to go more frequently. So behind is the video of what it used to be like when we were physical. So this is the team. Well, some of us at least. Do say hi. And please engage with us socially. We're on Mainframers Meetup, so we're on Meetup, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter. We have an Instagram account that's slowly being ramped up. Please get your phones out and scan the QR code. This is our newsletter. Andy does our newsletter. Give us a wave. Hi, Andy. He does our LinkedIn newsletter quite frequently. And we need volunteers. We're always looking for new people to join the organization. So if you're interested, please get involved. Let us know on Slack. And this is the link. Send us a DM. There are plenty of opportunities to get involved. If you want to be an organizer, we meet every 2 weeks for about half an hour. If you want to be a speaker, if you've got something interesting to say, please send us a message on Slack. And as you see, we've got positions for recruiters and hosts. If you've got enough bandwidth to host the session, then that would be great too. So please get involved, be a part of the community, just attend events, just boost the numbers up, drive the community, spread the word, let people know that this is free mainframe education, and yeah, pretty good fun, to be honest. And don't forget, at the end of each session, we will be providing an opportunity for you to give feedback. So today's agenda, we've got Rose from Broadcom, who'll be talking about Zoe event management. Kate, also from Broadcom, will be talking about developing on mainframe for VS Code with Code for Z. Daniel from IBM will be talking about the standardization of automation across the enterprise with Ansible for ZOS. And last but not least, people, the process, and the technology of DevOps from my colleague Stuart at BMC. So let's go to Rose.
All right.
Over to you, Rose.
Thanks, Marcus. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Give me 1 second to share. And start my slideshow. Okay, we're good to go. Yes, okay. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having us. I will be speaking today with my colleague, Mark Ackert. As Marcus mentioned, we're both from Broadcom, but we're speaking to you on behalf of the Zoe community. Zoe is an open mainframe project. As you know, it's open, probably all know it's open source for the mainframe. And we're going to share with you something that we're calling Zoe Event Management. Now, just to make sure that we're all level set here, what we're sharing with you today is a general understanding, general direction of where the Zoe community plans to go with this technology that we're currently researching. Mark and I are going to give you a little bit of a history of how it came about, what's happening now, how you could get involved in what we plan, what our plan is going forward. But no warranties beyond informational purposes, both from Broadcom and OMP. So Zoe Event Management, what is it? I'm going to try to define it for all of you in the form of the who, what, wow, and how. This is how we approached it from within the Zoe community. And if you're familiar with Zoe at all, you're probably aware that when we speak about Zoe, and quite honestly, some of our customers get upset with us when we refer to it as Zoe because they'd rather have us talk about the core components of Zoe when we're referencing Zoe. So whether we're talking about Zoe CLI or Zoe API mediation layer, or the Zoe desktop, or the Zoe Explorer, which is the VS Code extension that we use to manage jobs and files for Mainframe. This essentially, what we're hoping to do is make this event management another core component of Zoe. And the reason why we want to do this is that we recognize that the who out there, whether it be a Mainframe customer's application, or a Mainframe vendor product, or ZOS itself, needs the ability to integrate and or communicate with not products and services and applications that run on Z, but products and services and applications that run off Z. And we want to do it such that when something happens on the mainframe, the receiving application, whatever it is that's running off host, can be informed that something happened and can determine whether or not it wants to do something about it. How should it react to it? And we want to do this without using a technique called polling, and we want to do it without using point-to-point integrations. So what we are looking to do is to leverage an extensible foundational technology offered by Zoe, again, making this available to everyone to take advantage of, to capture these events in a predefined and standardized fashion. So if you're familiar at all with Zoe CLI, we tend to speak of Zoe CLI in the form of granting access to products and services that reside on a desktop and giving them the ability to reach into Mainframe. Essentially, what we're looking at here is the opposite. And that's why in the opening slide, we called it the bidirectional communication that you've been waiting for. We want Zoe to be able to provide communication in both directions. So essentially, that's the problem we're trying to solve. In addition to knowing that any solution that's currently available is vendor-based, which means vendors often provide this capability for their specific products and services. They don't offer it in a more generic fashion. What we tend to think of when we think about events that are occurring on the mainframe, at least this is what I think of, are the traditional capture of events in the form of SMF records. Those types of events have been around for probably as long as ZOS has been around. And the products and services that run on Z take advantage of those events and leverage that type of format to record that information and process that information. Unfortunately, that doesn't work for what we're looking to do. It's becoming, or it's been traditionally difficult to integrate anything across the hybrid solution landscape that most of our customers have. In other words, you all don't have just one vendor's worth of products within your organization. And there is no standard for this type of communication beyond SMF that is accepted by all of the ZOS vendors. So that was the problem. Those are the problems that we recognized existed. So what we did within the Zoe community, I just want to explain how this all came about. It came about from a couple of different angles. One was that we have Zoe clients, Zoe CLI and Zoe Explorer, the VS Code extension for jobs and files, that whereby they have the ability to interact with Mainframe, but they don't have the ability to in a very immediate fashion be able to alert the user for simple things that we were used to in an ISPF world, such as my job just ended. I want to know immediately whether I'm a person or a technology that job ended. And now, because we're working in a VS Code environment, we have to go cross-platform. So we had a need within Zoe itself to be able to be more dynamic and more real time in indicating that such things like a job ending could be captured and sent off to something that's running off platform, in this case Zoe CLI or Zoe Explorer. In addition to that, as we're building up our technology around another project that's in its, we call it incubator project. It's essentially a project that's under development called Zoe Chat. We have a need for this very technology and this very capability within the chat capability itself. And so we were looking for something like this for other purposes within Zoe. In addition to that, the folks that are in the Zoe community from all of the vendors that participate, they shared additional use cases whereby they could see value in having Zoe offer this type of solution. And so what we concluded that, it makes sense to have the Zoe community look at this and offer this type of technology in a vendor agnostic way, make it a foundational piece of Zoe, because many mainframe, if not, well, we're hoping all mainframe customers adopt Zoe. Let's just make it available as part of Zoe. We also had several of our customers who validated that this in fact would be valuable to them. So the next steps for us, and this is what happens within the Zoe community, just as an FYI for any of you interested in seeing if we'd be willing to take on a new technology, the Zoe Advisory Council, which is sort of the product management arm of Zoe, they established a work group to collect initial requirements. From there, we presented the requirements and the problems to solve, just as I presented them here to you today, to the Zoe Technical Steering Committee. This is essentially the head of Zoe, the lead group of Zoe. And they felt that this was worthy of further investigation. And they established a work group of which I and Mark, who will be talking next, are a part of. Actually, Mark is leading it. And we recruited more folks, established the work group, and we're set out to deliver a POC. So that's sort of the history and how it was formed and how it all began. Mark's going to go into a little bit more detail on what we hope to do with it.
Yep. Thanks, Rose. So I wanted to start by talking to some of the use cases that were shared with us by some of our extenders. As we mentioned, we have use cases that we know about in the Zoe community, but these extender use cases are also, I think, prove the value of building a framework that's extensible for everybody. So, in like the DevOps space, I think there's a lot of common events that you can capture, like code check-ins or build events, like build start or builds complete. What you want to do with those events vary a lot based on, what you're trying to do in your environment. For instance, like when a check-in happens, maybe what you want to do is have that event be sent off to Jenkins to kick off a build, right? This is simple, just, check-in, code change, build it. When builds are completed, maybe those are events that kick off other builds, or maybe instead you want notifications in your Slack client or whatever chat application you're using, within your business. And this way everybody's notified in real time that the change has been built and now it's ready to be tested. And once you take the next step and start running automated test suites that are running against that change, once everything passes, that's another event that you could capture. And maybe you want that notification sent to your ticketing platform like Service Desk. That way you can initiate the next process in your business to approve the change and roll it out to production. And if you're using system monitoring products and practicing AI ops, there's more use cases here for events. If a system goes high CPU and generates a critical alert, you're probably actually going to want to send notifications to everybody you can find. So that means sending it to chat applications. That could be sending it to email inboxes, ticketing services, anything that can get somebody's attention so that they can, triage the system. And you could also have, less critical system events like, user submitted jobs that, when those are completed, it's nice to get a notification back to the user in their chat client like Slack that the job's been completed, so that now they can do the next part of their job. Right now, today, when a user submits a job, even when it's off platform, they have to go onto the system and keep refreshing it to see when that job's actually been completed. Either wasting time or going off and doing some other task and then just coming back way, way, way later in the day to see if it actually finished. Rose mentioned how, there's lots of, existing solutions out there, and some of them address, these kinds of use cases. And for a lot of them, the event management tends to be very much vendor-based. So everybody comes up with their own technology stack and their own set of point-to-point integrations. And really, the cost of everybody doing this and using their own way of surfacing events, it usually lands on the people that have to install, configure, and manage all of these individual solutions on their site. So, I think it's a major benefit to Zoe's approach to event management that we can help reduce the operational cost for everybody using these types of services. And we can accomplish this, largely because we're an open source project, right? Anybody and everybody is going to be able to use this event management stack. And if it's lacking something they need, they can also contribute to it, right? We're doing everything in the open.
Exactly.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So, right now, the community is working to take this idea and this vision and to try and make it concrete. So we have regular workgroup meetings that are open to the public, and we're discussing everything there about event management, from core technology options that are going to underpin this, like Artemis MQ, ActiveMQ, Kafka, RabbitMQ, to qualities and characteristics that we're looking for in the overall solution. So things like security and securability, performance characteristics, reliability guarantees, the install and configuration experience, operational requirements, and best practices across the board, both for ourselves within Zoe when we're solving our use cases, and as well as future extenders. So we're always looking for more people to join. If you have use cases to bring forward, if you can, just help validate our current technical direction, or, if you just want to hang out and see what we're working on, and that'd be great. We'd be happy to have you join. So if you want to join, our meetings right now are every other week on Tuesdays from 10 to 10:30 Eastern, with our next regular meeting on May 9th. This upcoming quarter, what we're planning to work on is wrapping up our initial set of research on the core technologies, and we're going to begin entering an experimentation phase. So what we're going to be doing there is we're going to be working on building this out, writing code to make POCs that address the Zoe use cases that we know about with our other components in the Zoe ecosystem. And we're going to be reflecting on how those meet all of the other requirements we've identified. And we're hoping to complete this by end of Q2. So, back to you, Rose.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so we have a shout out for all of you. If this has captured your interest, if you have a specific use case in mind, if you want to just have a conversation around it, we're absolutely looking for folks to validate the solution with us, whether you're a vendor or end user or something anywhere in between. As Mark said, you want to just hang out with us and sit in and listen in on some of the meetings. Our email addresses are here. We're at Broadcom. We are part of the OMP Zoe community, and just to reiterate, anyone within the community, mostly anyone, probably someone from the work group, could have delivered this information. This isn't specific to Broadcom. This is part we're working this as part of Zoe. And then if I may, just one final ask, if you're interested in this at all, and you would love to see us continue to move this forward, we have a survey going on at zoe.org. Every month we have a question of the month. It's a survey that appears as a question of the month, and May's question allows you, grants you $100 to spend on something that we're working on in Zoe. And we list 4 items, I think 4 items, and we give you the option to say, no, I don't like any of them, I'd like something else. If you're interested in event management, it is one of the selections. So go ahead and put your $100 down on that and help us to understand where your priorities lie with what we're doing within Zoe. So that's zoe.org when you get a chance. And I think that's all we had. Do we have any questions?
We don't have any questions yet, but I was going to ask one, which was, how can we help if we were to join the Zoe team as a volunteer? But I think you've already answered that. You've got some fantastic initiatives going on there. If anybody's got any questions, please pop them into the Q&A of the Zoom session, and we'll try and get them answered as soon as we can.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's see who's next. So now we have Kate Tumanova from Broadcom. We'll be talking about developing on Mainframe from VS Code. Now, as a VS Code fan myself, I'm quite looking forward to this one. So over to you, Kate.
Thanks, Marcus. Just 1 second, let me share my screen. Hope you can see that. Can you see my screen? Am I audible?
Yep, both. Loud and clear.
Wonderful.
See the screen.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thanks for the opportunity to speak today and to share with you how you can develop on Mainframe using Visual Studio Code, just like on any other platform that is there. My name is Kate Tumanova. I'm from Broadcom. I'm a product manager of Code4Z project, and I'm going to be talking about it in a second. So let me just skip through the disclaimer. So this slide is obligatory slide. It just basically means that everything I'm talking about today is true as of today, as of April. It is a subject to change in future though. Let's skip through that. So I like to start talking about this with why VS Code. So, and a few years ago when we started looking into the Visual Studio Code, I believe we were one of the first vendors to start looking at that. We were absolutely astonished by the different approach that VS Code actually has as compared to, say, a monolithic, not customizable, heavy IDEs, such as the Eclipse IDEs at the time. Visual Studio Code has actually absolutely different approach. So it is an open source and also an open IDE, meaning that there is over 45,000 today extensions that are available on the marketplace. So it's highly customizable. It's integrated natively with Git, and it's free of charge. And developers really love this ability to have a lightweight editor with the easy and useful interfaces on top of that, and such as, for example, a powerful debugging interface. So why developers love VS Code lately? Because of the lightning fast navigation and analysis and editing and all other interfaces that it provides, and not to mention ability to actually customize your environment and use the languages, among the hundreds of languages that Visual Studio Code actually supports, and data structures that you actually need. So then we started looking into how can we make actually Visual Studio Code work with the mainframe, and we came up with something that we call Code for Z. It is a open and free extension pack. So we believe that it covers the end-to-end experience for the developer, starting from editing and source code analysis and debugging, testing, compilation, etc. So there are many more extensions out there, but this is the pack that provides like most of the normal activities for a developer and for our standard stack. It is built on the Visual Studio Code, and because of that, I think that the nature of the environment and the nature of the Visual Studio Code itself and its extensibility actually and the ability to be customizable actually provides a perfect architecture for mainframers, for hybrid environments, for people that are looking to use the common tools across the board. A little more on the extensibility of the Code for Z. So we have some of the mainframe shops working with us who are actually building on top of the some of the Code for Z extensions, specifically, for example, to support their proprietary custom dialects. So they extend in a way the grammar and use our extensions at the base. So a little more about that, how the Code for Z is actually empowering you to use the Visual Studio Code on mainframe. So things, for example, such as AI-powered editions. So things like ChatGPT and things like Copilot extensions. So Visual Studio Code is actually because of its popularity, and by the way, it is a #1 IDE according to latest survey by Stack Overflow. So things like AI-powered extensions are actually going to be available for Visual Studio Code in the first place, and there are actually already many extensions that you can download and try, and including it may help you get started with your COBOL development and etc. So a little more detail on what's there in the extension pack, and we have 8 extensions in the pack. We also include, for example, the Zoe Explorer. It's a Zoe extension, which allows you to access the mainframe assets. So we also include, extensions for our ASCM endeavor. So we have a kind of a bucket of extensions for accessing, and then we have a portfolio of extensions for navigation and editing. And here I'm talking about, the language support extensions, such as language support for COBOL or high-level assembler, and COBOL control flow, which allows you to generate a graph of your program. And it is an interactive graph and allows you to quickly navigate within your code and understand the program flow. And then there is a third portfolio of extensions where we talk about debugging and testing and app analysis. I'm going to be talking about these 3 in a little more detail, but just so you know, there are many more extensions available in the marketplace. So if you search for mainframe, JSCL, Rex, EZ3, etc. So there are many more vendors who are contributing these days to the Visual Studio Code marketplace. So it is becoming a big thing for the mainframe. So do not hesitate to just go and explore what's there for your particular shop. So let me progress. So I wanted to talk a little more about the particular use cases which I find especially useful for the mainframers, and first and foremost, code navigation and code analysis. And here I'm talking about this extension like language support extensions and the control flow. So these are open extensions, and basically, there is no prerequisites on the Mainframe side. You don't have to have any specific vendor product. These are available for you to start using, trying, and getting value from it. And we have actually developers in-house who migrated from 30 to 70 to for our extension, our language support extensions and Visual Studio Code, and it was absolutely a revelation for them, and plainly because the code analysis and navigation capability of VS Code is pretty much very hard to beat. So things like scrolling and navigation is something that usually distributed developers take for granted. When you move from the 30 to 70 development, it becomes very, very obvious. And then extensions I'll build on top of that. They use the standard interfaces of Visual Studio Code for adding the highlighting and syntax checking, and showing you the various ways that you can navigate within the one module, or move to your definitions, open your copybooks, etc., etc. Very powerful regex search is something as well our developers absolutely love. And then the COBOL control flow, I'm going to be showing you a screenshot in a second, is also something that is loved by a lot of our users and the community. Then let me just move ahead, because I think that a picture says a thousand words, and actually here I'm showing just a couple of things that are available, with the COBOL language support extension. So here, if you click on the particular variable, if you right click, you will be able to select the peak references feature, which is pretty powerful. And here you can immediately see all the references and move from one to another and quickly see a code of where this is used, where this is references. Then here as well, you can see the outline view from where you can move from your identification division to data division, etc., etc., very quickly. As well, the standard feature of Visual Studio Code on the right, you can see your navigation bar where there is highlighted an error. So it's quite easy. You can see all your errors on the right and can navigate instantly to the particular respective section. Real quick on the control flow. So here you can see a graph. It looks pretty busy, but it's actually interactive graph. So you can collapse it, you can expand it, and then while you're clicking on your particular graph nodes, you will be immediately navigated in your source code to a particular line, and it works vice versa. So you can move. If you click within the code, it will also highlight where in the graph you are actually located at this moment. So a little more about debugging and photo analysis. So unlike the other extensions I've been talking about, these actually require Mainframe components on the backend. So if they require products such as Intertest or SimDump, but interestingly, these are using the standard Visual Studio Code debugging interfaces. So on the front end, that all you see is that the debugging interfaces that are used for other languages. And I believe, you can, other vendors are going the same way. So, you can debug your applications. You can also analyze your application events. So if you are a Broadcom customer, don't hesitate to download this and try. Very briefly, I'll show you how the debugger in Visual Studio Code looks. So as you can see here, you can simply click on the line, and it will create for you a breakpoint, and you can see all your breakpoints here. You have your statement trace. You see your variables. You can add particular variables to watch, as well as you can see your call stack. One of the interesting things here on this screenshot is that you can have various extensions, complementing each other and helping you to more easily understand and navigate along your code and debug. In such case, we are in the debugging session. We are looking at the listing, but in fact, the listing is highlighted by the language support extension. You can have all sorts of, your peak references, and you can use the hover over variables to see the definitions, etc. At the same time, while you are in the debugging session, you can also look at the control flow, and that is where, while you are jumping from one in a runtime, jumping from one statement to another, you will be also navigating through the graph. So isn't that cool? So this is actually what multiple extensions provide. So they give you way more than just using one single extension for Mainframe. So what you can do, you can download and try Code4Z today. We would be very happy if you do so. You can find it on web, on the marketplace. You can also plainly type in and search for in your Visual Studio Code. You can search for Code4Z, or you can search for anything else there. So you don't have to install all the 8 extensions. You can also install them individually. What we'd like to, if you try that, we would be more than happy if you share feedback with us, or if you have any other questions. We in fact have our own Slack channel, and it's very easy to get an invite. Please also do not hesitate to just reach out to me. Here's my email. And on the Slack channel, you will be able to, directly speak with our development team, share your experience, and, plainly, if you would like to contribute, we will be more than happy to help you with that. So this is the very easy and fastest way to get in touch with the Code4Z team. Thank you so much. And I guess if there are any questions, let me know.
There are no open questions. Although I was looking at Code4Z a while ago, and I was wondering, have you got any plans to support ISPF dialogues and panels, GML skeletons, and so forth?
Well, in fact, we're open to any feedback, and we're basically actively developing right now the extensions. So usually it's based on the customer feedback. We have a lot in our backlog. So I think, we do have this on our backlog. It will depend on how many, customer votes we would get for that, and end user votes. So, yeah. And I see there was a question also on the chat. No, it's not based on the expeditor. The debugger extension was based on the intertest, Broadcom intertest.
Okay, great, thank you very much. I believe that's it. So thank you very much, Kate. Let's see who's next. So we have Daniel Just from IBM, Senior Product Manager, talking of the standardization of automation across the enterprise with Ansible. Over to you, Daniel.
Awesome. Thanks, Marcus. I'll share my screen as well. Hopefully you guys can now see, hopefully. Will I have to swap? No, perfect. All right.
Perfect, thanks.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for having me here at the Mainframerz Meetup. I'm glad to be here. This is my first one. My name is Dan Jast. I'm a senior product manager here at IBM. Working on mainly the mainframe modernization space for the last 6 years since I've been here. But for the last 3 or so years, I've been working on the extension of Ansible to ZOS with IBM. We're going to go into a lot of stuff here in a second. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them out here. I get pretty excited about this stuff. This is something I am a bit passionate about, coming from a system programmer background. So, if I get too excited, one of 2 of Matt Comer's screens can tell me to calm down here. So awesome. Perfect. All right. So here we go. Let's get started. So where I like to start is kind of why, IBM and other contributors in the Z ecosystem have started looking at the Ansible automation platform, right? And when we look at the tooling on ZOS specifically today, right, there's been a lot of very specific tooling to our platform, right? When you talk specific to automation, we talk a language of JCL, we talk a language of Rex, ZOSMF workflows, right? Things that if you're working on the distributed side of the house, or if you are coming out of college, you've heard absolutely nothing about, right? We don't learn that type of stuff in school anymore. So how can we tailor to the standards of the enterprise when we're talking automation, right? And that's really where Ansible comes into play. Ansible has been the most popular automation platform in the industry now, coming up on almost 8 years, 9 years we're talking here. More recently, in the last 3 years, it's blown its competition out of the water in the marketplace. And that's really where, the opportunity was seen, especially, when IBM acquired Red Hat, a couple of years back. We really saw an opportunity here to start extending that Ansible automation platform and standardizing the way we can do automation for the mainframe, in addition, in a consistent way with other platforms, right? So, these are some of the value plays, and that's what I love about working with Red Hat here. I work very closely with Red Hat. Some people actually confuse me for being a Red Hat employee. I'm not. I do work for IBM. But some of the nice parts is a lot of the value plays that work for Red Hat, for distributed, also work for Z. So, I could use their charts like this one. So why the Ansible automation platform? First of all, it's extremely powerful. I'll go into some of the amounts of in the ecosystem for Ansible, but when you start piecing together all these contributors, all this different content, the amount of platforms and software and applications you're able to manage, it's extremely powerful. And the ability to orchestrate that automation at scale in a consistent way, Ansible's the best at that. And it's incredibly impressive how we can, automate across not just our Z systems, our distributed systems, our networking environments, our security environments, our storage environments, all in a consistent way. It's very impressive. Also, it's very simple. When you look at an Ansible playbook, it doesn't look like JCL where you're really, if you don't know the language, you don't really know what you're reading. When you read an Ansible playbook, it's in plain English right there in front of you, exactly what it's trying to do. I'm going to create this data set. I'm then going to copy, JCL into that data set. I'm then going to submit that data set as a job. I then want to view that job output. That's literally what the playbook is basically going to say. And then you are just specifying in YAML syntax the variables within those steps that specify where that data set location is, or what that job ID was to check that job status, right? So it's very simple to be able to understand what it is that you're trying to automate. And that is consistent across any platform or any content you're leveraging Ansible automation for. And then the last, piece of the Ansible automation platform's value here is that it's agentless. You are not actually installing anything on ZOS or Linux on Z or anywhere that is Ansible. You run that on something we call our control node, and I'll get into the architecture of Ansible in a second here and how this works, but you don't run anything on ZOS, which makes it very lightweight and very easy to actually integrate with a lot of different pieces on your platform, which I'll touch upon. Ansible automation platform, this is the view of the major components that currently make up this platform. This is an hour presentation in itself to go over this, so I'm not planning on doing so, but what I will touch upon is the content collections. On the bottom left-hand side of the chart here, this is where our contributions from IBM, from Broadcom, from other vendors in the industry are being contributed to be, and basically a collection you could think of is basically like a targeted space where we're contributing content for something like Kix or DB2 or ZOS Connect or other types of areas for targeted content for that specific piece of middleware, software, application, system, whatever it may be. So there's a lot of different content collections in the community. There's over 90 certified content collection contributors out in the community. And when I say certified, that means that there's a joint agreement with Red Hat and IBM to actually support those collections out in the community. And when we say support, you do have to be a license owner of the Ansible automation platform to gain that support, but you could also take advantage of all of these collections for free via the open source community. So you have both routes, but our mainframe clients always like support. So all of our IBM collections here are supported as certified collections here. But as you can see, very large list. Some of the cool things, as I mentioned in the powerful kind of section of the Ansible automation platform, is when you start piecing together some of these different collections that are out in the enterprise, right? So I've worked with a big bank, Rabobank actually, on some use cases with automation with Ansible, and they've actually hosted all of their code in Azure repositories and actually run a custom certificate authority that they've homegrown within Azure on the Azure cloud. So now they're using our ZOS collections to drive certificate renewal automation, pushing those certificates back to their homegrown, certificate management authority in Azure, and leveraging all of, the jobs and other types of code under the covers that are hosted in Azure repositories by leveraging the Azure collections there, right? So we're talking, multiple collections being leveraged within a single playbooks, which are the scripts with Ansible, right? And it's really impressive what you can start doing when you piece together a lot of these different components. From IBM, we have 6 collections available today. I don't want to go too deep into most of these, but just going down the line really quickly, I'll go deeper into one. We have the Hardware Management Console collection, providing access to the Hardware Management Console. The Kix collection, really wrapped around the CMCI REST interface for Kix, if you're familiar with that. The IMS collection, this mainly allows you to submit IMS type 1, type 2 commands. I am not an IMS expert by any means, so that's as far as you're going to hear me talk about that one. ZOSMF, this one's more centric around the plugins for ZOSMF. So workflows, security configuration assistant, cloud provisioning and management, and some of the new plugins that ZOSMF has coming as well. So you'll definitely experience updates to this collection in the very near future. And then there's a policy-based automation product from IBM called Z System Automation. And we also have a collection for that to allow you to create and delete dynamic resources as a part of your policies. Now, I did skip the core collection, and this is because this is by far the most popular collection for Z today out in the community. The ZOS core collection is the collection providing all the foundational building blocks for automating on ZOS. So data set operations, job submission, TSO operator commands, mounting and allocating of ZFS files. We have a new module that's dropping this week to allow you to initialize volumes. There's a whole lot more. I mean, this collection's been downloaded over 120,000 times in the last 3 years out on the open source community, and that's not including the closed source community for the certified collections, right? So a lot of usage. This is definitely where we suggest a lot of our clients start, and it is where a lot start, and I'll show the use cases of how some clients are using this today in a bit here. So looking at the architecture and how this functions a bit, there's really 2 main ways that these collections are being driven by. The more simple and existent way that we were kind of talking towards with the Kix collection, the Hardware Management Console, System Automation, and ZOSMF is by leveraging products' existing REST APIs on the platforms, right? So we're connecting into those products' REST APIs directly and executing functions that those REST APIs support. So when you think about that as well, right, that doesn't limit us to only these 4 offerings that have dedicated collections for what we can automate against, right? ZOS Connect, MQ, DB2 DevOps experience, right? Those all have their own REST APIs on the platform that we can connect into with Ansible via out-of-the-box modules that come with the Ansible automation platform. There's a URI module, it's actually called, that basically lets you submit a REST API call directly from Ansible. So any product on z/OS today that has a REST API, we can interact with. And then for the z/OS core collection specifically, and more of the standard way that Ansible performs on other platforms, we connect to systems via SSH. So we're connecting to Unix system services, to the SSH, daemon that's running there. We have Python and IBM Z Open Automation utilities as our prerequisites there. Ansible is mainly Python based under the covers, and to be able to provide a lot of the MVS access from Unix system services, we leverage ZOAU as kind of that command line interface there for us. But that also provides us all of access to all the control blocks we need access to JES, to TSO, to the z/OS console. So now we can start expanding out beyond just the direct z/OS access too, right? So some of our most popular use cases are security use cases, because via the TSO command module or via being able to drive programs in z/OS directly, we're able to interact with top secret, ACF2, RACF, right, via these types of commands or programs that we run. So my little marketing pitch I always say is don't limit yourself for what you can automate with just the 6 collections we have available, because you really can do a whole lot more with the content that's available today in the community. And to help you get started with that content that's available in the community, we do host a GitHub repository that hosts, I believe the last time I counted, there was 165 playbooks hosted in this repository. A very common experience you could expect with Ansible off platform is you go into Google, you Google Ansible, I want to automate this or whatever, right? And you find something on Stack Overflow that you can copy out and start working with, right? Unfortunately, we don't have that same type of luxury on the mainframe side. One, because we haven't had as much of a presence in the Stack Overflow space up to this time, but also because we're just kind of newer to this Ansible game, on the mainframe side of the house as well, right? So that's really where this repository's desire and need was coming from. And this is open source. So please, if you're starting with Ansible or you're starting to write content, consider contributing out to this repository. This is growing, by the week. I believe we actually just got new contributions in from the Kix team showing off the new update that the Kix collection just got. So you can go and check that one out in here, as well as I just wrote a blog with the Kix lead designer too that I published on my LinkedIn. So you can check that out as well. A couple new exciting things coming from Red Hat in the area of Ansible I wanted to touch upon as well. So Red Hat and IBM actually announced a partnership here around Project Wisdom. And Project Wisdom is actually where Red Hat has partnered with IBM Research on being able to leverage a lot of our AI training models that we've been working on. And now we're talking about the possibility of basically we're looking at a VS Code extension. So playing nicely with, with the session you just heard from this before by Katerina here. And basically what we're looking at here is, okay, I want to provision a Kix region and connect that to my DB2. Let's just say that's my use case I want to do, right? The model should be trained well enough based on the content in the community, the playbooks we're feeding through it, and some of the manual training that we're doing from IBM as well, to know exactly what content it needs to put into the playbook to be able to achieve that, as well as the information it's pulling from the systems that you've populated it with access to be able to grab the environment variables. So now it's doing automated playbook generation as well as discovery of your systems in the process. It can even suggest steps to add to your playbooks you might not even be considering, knowing how others have done these types of automation in the communities, right? So this is a huge initiative that IBM and Red Hat have been teaming on, and you have the ability to contribute to this. This is fully open source as well. So any community contributor can start training these models and getting started with this. Highly suggest checking out the YouTube playlist I have linked here in these charts, because there's a lot of really cool demos, as well as there's going to be a lot of exciting announcements around this at Ansible Fest and Red Hat Summit coming up in Boston at the end of May. So if you are planning on attending, I'll be there. Please let me know if you're going, because I'd love to meet up. Also, Rose, we should probably talk about this one a little bit because we might be able to play together here. Red Hat also announced event-driven Ansible automation, where we're looking at popular community event aggregators, basically things like Kafka, like Rose showed as well, and basically being able to take action upon those events that we're aggregating with Ansible automation, right? That's always been kind of a limitation in the Ansible space up to this point, because Ansible is agentless. So we don't have anything that's running on the platforms to monitor for those events. So now with the ability to plug into those existing aggregators, we do have that capability. So you can learn more about that, a lot more information coming there as well. Here's kind of our use case chart. If you've seen me present on Ansible before, it's a good chance you've seen this, but we do add updates to this pretty regularly as we work with more clients. But these are the 6 main areas of use cases. Going into just a couple of these, the first section on provisioning, maintenance, and configuration, probably our second most popular use case to date. Pain points around SMPE being complex and having a lot of touch points that are tough for a lot of our new ZOS users, as well as rolling out maintenance across systems in a consistent and standard way. That's something that Ansible has been doing in distributed systems for years now, patching, networking devices, distributed systems, cloud systems, a whole other, can keep going there for a long time on what they do. But this is, kind of extending the consistency of Ansible's ability to drive that maintenance and configuration and provisioning capabilities to the mainframe as well. Security automation, as I touched upon, by far our most popular area so far. We're working with one major US bank who manages over 3,000 certificates a year, takes an hour per certificate. We've dropped that time down to about 3 minutes per certificate, saving them about 2,700 hours per year on their certificate renewal processes. So we're really seeing a lot of value there in certificate renewal automation. And then the last one I want to touch upon here is orchestration. We're not saying rewrite all your Rex and JCL and ZOSMF workflows into Ansible. That would be counterproductive because we know how great the value of all that has been for so many years. But what I definitely am an advocate for is orchestrating and scheduling a lot of that through Ansible, or being able to, once you have new needs for that JCL and Rex, being able to take out maybe some of those pieces and implement them directly via the Ansible modules we're providing in our collections, which will definitely help with some of the maintainability challenges we have from a JCL and Rex perspective on our platform. So orchestration is a great starter use case to be able to leverage a lot of the existing automation in the enterprise. Coming to pretty much the end here, just want to share a couple resources. We do have a Z trial available out on the marketplace. So we have 3 pre-written scenarios of playbooks that you can go run through. If you want to try this out for yourself, it's free to do so. You get a remote desktop access, so go try this out. You could also, it's also being driven through VS Code. So playing nicely what Katerina said as well, there's a really nice VS Code plugin for Ansible, which also does syntax highlighting, syntax completion. You can run your playbooks directly through VS Code. A lot of great features are built into VS Code for Ansible as well. So, that VS Code ecosystem is continuing to grow for the mainframe as well on our end. And so definitely go check out the Z trial if you want to try this out. If you want more of a feel for what the Ansible automation platform has to offer, there's a whole bunch more free trials that Red Hat provides. On the left is a free trial of the actual full platform that you can install on your own systems and get running with. Or you could just try out some more of those components that I shared in the topology for the Ansible automation platform on the right. A very popular use case with Ansible automation is integration with ServiceNow, which a lot of our clients leverage. So there is one at the bottom right there you can see on getting started with ServiceNow automation. And I believe that the most recent update to these self-paced labs also included one on the event-driven Ansible stuff. So you can go try that out for yourself as well there. And then last but definitely not least is our community guild in our community here that we have. Obviously in the IBM Z and Linux One community, you can come and join this. This is where we post all of our blogs and videos and stuff like that. Every new release to our collections or new collections that are going to be added in the future, which there definitely will be some, will be announced here, and I mainly drive that. So if you follow me on LinkedIn or join this community, you'll see that. But we also host a community guild for Ansible, and that's basically a core set of users that are early adopters at our client shops for Ansible. So if you are interested in this, if you want to stay up to date in the community, or you want to provide us feedback on our roadmap, or even come and share what you're doing in the community, you could follow that link to register for our community guild. We meet once a month at 10 a.m. EST on the second Wednesday of every month. So really great place that we're having to provide feedback directly to our development group, as well as gain priorities for our roadmaps. Last slide is just a bunch of resources you could check out if you want to see a live demo, or not live, but recorded demo of that certificate management use case that I talked about. That's a good video to check out right there. As well as if you are starting to build out your Ansible strategy, a lot of questions pop up around security. I did do a webinar directly on the considerations you should be making around security when setting up your Ansible environment for ZOS. So check that one out as well. Two really good resources to be aware of. So that's what I got today. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, but I'll also take any open questions here as well. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much, Daniel. We do have one question. Abdallah asks, why not leverage ZOSMF REST API, for example, TSO submit console for Ansible ZOS core collection?
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple different reasons for that. I mean, one of the major ones is that, as I kind of shared, we wanted to stay consistent with the way that Ansible was performing in the marketplace to date. And if you look at the way that Ansible performs on distributed systems, it's almost always via SSH. So because of that, that is one of the main reasons why. It's also because by leveraging something like IBM Z Open Automation Utilities and working closely with the group with IBM Z Open Automation Utilities, we can get additional parameters added to the Z Open Automation Utility commands that allow us to enhance our Ansible modules behind the scenes. So if we need to add a force option to allow you to do something, or modifying coding as a part of a command or something like that, that's all stuff that then gets baked into our collections later down the line. So if you do keep up to date with the Z Open Automation Utilities, offering, when you see new commands or new features added to that, you could almost expect that a lot of those subsequently will come into our Ansible modules down the line. So we have a little bit more control there as well, if that makes sense. But it's really more about a standard story there from an SSH perspective.
Fabulous, thank you.
Hey, Dan.
Let's just check.
Hey, Rose.
Hey, I just wanted to mention too that, as Dan, as you mentioned, Broadcom has contributed a number of collections into the Galaxy. We produce Ansible collections for every single one of our Zoe CLI plugins. So if you have a preference for Ansible over Zoe CLI for some reason, all of the actions and activities that you would expect to find in are able to execute via Zoe CLI are available as an Ansible action, if you will, in the form of a collection.
Thanks, Rose.
Okay, so the title of today's Mainframers Meetup is DevOps and Modernization on the Mainframe. So we've done a lot of modernization, so let's move over to Stuart, who's be talking about the people, the process, and the technology of DevOps. Thanks very much, Stuart. Over to you.
Thank you, Marcus. And for some of the things that we've already heard today, there is the Z Explore platform. I think we talked about it at the last meetup. So with Z Explore, you can get to use VS Code. You get to, if you go far enough, there's a bit of Ansible in there. So there's plenty going on for people to try out some of the stuff you've seen, even if your current employer doesn't have some of this available to you. There are ways to explore it and perhaps become an advocate in your organization, which is kind of some of the thing that I'm going to get onto. And as part of my intro slide, I've also got who I am. And Marcus contributes to the GSE UK event in November. And last year we actually had, earlier this year we had a virtual thing, and Dan contributed. We had a whole day of Ansible content. So this isn't something that is new. It's been around a while. You know, plenty of opportunity to use these things. Anyway, on to me, people, process, technology of DevOps. So since 2014, I'd like to think I've been an agent of culture change, and also technologically doing integration mainframe solutions with non-mainframe tools to automate development processes. And in that time, you know, I've seen the most accelerated success comes from when an organization always addresses the people, the process, and the technology in that order. So the agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit about DevOps on the right-hand side. There's the DevOps infinity loop, the classic imagery, and it brings to life some of the phases of the software delivery lifecycle. I'm going to touch a little bit on culture. As I just mentioned, the most successful modernization stories come from companies that bring the people along with the transformation. I'm quite a big reader of books because there's a lot of people smarter than I am that have done some great stuff. And there's one out there called Sooner, Safer, Happier by John Smart. And he has some great strap lines in it. And one of them is invite over inflict. So bring people along, don't mandate things at a point in time. Say, hey, come along, look at this, look at what we're doing with Ansible, with VS Code, with Zoe. Get people interested, and it's much more impactful than saying from today we're going to be doing this and you will come along. And then I want to talk about thinking differently a little bit, because you know, I'm old, I'm grey, closer to retirement than most, and you know, we've done stuff in a certain way. We've certainly changed the way we've been doing stuff, but it's accelerating fast with things like VS Code and Zoe and Ansible enabling that. But I was talking to a young man this morning who's come from an incredibly sophisticated education system, and I was saying to him, I'm really excited about him coming onto the mainframe because he thinks differently. He's going to have a view on how we can do things differently. And that's why this Mainframers community is so important. You know, the world is wired differently to when the vast majority of our mainframe applications were built. And to for those organizations that have mainframes, if they're going to get ahead of cloud native companies, then the approach has got to be different. Right, so DevOps. Let me start with DevOps. It's not really any kind of one thing. I mentioned people, process, and technology. So installing technology or tools just won't make you agile, won't make things go faster. But it is sometimes necessary to stop doing what you're doing, spend some time to understand what a current process looks like, determine what it needs to look like, and then spend some more time adapting, bringing the people along, you know, that invite over inflict and some tools, maybe new tools, or you know, new to the mainframe, so that you can start exploiting new processes. And certainly we found that, you know, I think with COVID over the last 3 years, there's been a few instances where every worker has had to stop and learn new things, new ways of working. And from what you've seen, it's now possible to use the same tools across different compute platforms, which makes it easier to move stuff around, make them feel empowered, because there isn't the steep learning curve of all the stuff around the mainframe ISPF and JES and SDSF. You know, you can use an IDE with plugins that simplify all of that. So DevOps really has 3 founding principles, and I mentioned there's a seminal book by a thought leader, Gene Kim, called The Phoenix Project, and it introduced the concept of the 3 ways on which DevOps principles have been founded. And the first way is flow. and the value stream, relating back to people and process aspect. How are you delivering solutions to your customers, both external and internal today? And what are the bottlenecks in that process? When you're mapping this out, what are the steps that form those bottlenecks? Are they people, are they process, or are they technology? The second way is the continuous feedback. As we start to deliver in new ways, it's absolutely vital that delivery quality is assessed. So the good, the bad, and the ugly should be retrospectively reviewed to ensure what lessons can be learned. And as we learn to give that continuous feedback, there's an element of we have to enable a culture of continuous improvement. So allocating time in our busy work lives to understand new methods and practices that can be applied to your existing processes. So attending events like this or Share or GSE, are great opportunities, great ways to take that time out of the work life and understand what other companies are doing, sharing information and learning it for continually improving. And there's a need here for measurement, because if you're not measuring how processes are happening and the changes that are made, are they having the positive impact on what you're expecting? Are they doing what you're doing? So to zoom in on that a little bit, the Phoenix project defines the whole flow and value stream in the context of manufacturing, and then extrapolates that how it applies to DevOps and technology value streams. One of the fundamental concepts in Lean is the value stream. And that term, what does it mean? It's about bringing together the activities an organization undertakes to deliver value to the end customer. So instead of having silos of a team that does this, then a team that does that, then a team that does product implementation, bring them together in a single team that is owns the whole thing to reduce handoffs and improve flow. And then about making work visible is how to visualize data of each phase of the software delivery lifecycle, so that you can identify the next most important friction point that needs addressing. We've also got a little bit around flow means limiting work in progress. Don't build up unfinished work. So develop a culture of stop starting and start finishing features or whatever it is. And then reducing batch sizes and the number of handoffs is going to improve flow. So making changes, the content of changes smaller, but perhaps increasing the frequency. So many small iterations can still have a big impact, rather than building up hundreds of changes and then delivering them in one go. Because remember, your customers can get value out of those features as and when they need them. As and when they get delivered, the faster they get delivered, the sooner they can be taking value. And then looking for identifying and evaluating constraints can be achieved using the data that there's options out there to look at value stream data, so that you can look for those constraints to keep improving flow. And there's lots of new ways of working, but swapping from activity to activity can be really harmful. So if you're working on a new feature and then you're called into doing a bug fix, that context switching can be really harmful to a cycle time metric. So understanding the cost of change in terms of impact to the end-to-end cycle is really important. Maybe you have teams that only work on new features. They don't have support responsibilities as well. And quite often documentation is out of date as soon as it's created. So working code over documentation might be something that's going to improve that flow. So then that leads on to the second way, and we have to ensure that going faster doesn't impact our product quality. So you've seen how using an IDE over ISPF can help with visualization and some of the plugins that we can get. We can make sure that we don't have inefficient code. We don't have vulnerable code from securities with plugins, and they're never escaping the IDE. They're there with squiggly red lines and eye catchers to help out the advanced and the less advanced developer, make sure that those things don't get out of the IDE. And we want to make sure that going faster doesn't impact reliability. This is where automated testing may help, along with the appropriate metrics of escape to bends or something. So you're making sure that you're still delivering, the team is still delivering reliable code to the production environment. And then one other thing that might be interesting is the safety. We must ensure, it's incumbent that we must ensure that people feel empowered to innovate and experiment. And I'll go into that a little bit later with in the thinking differently. So the third way is continuous improvement, and this builds upon the continuous feedback. So we can use valuable data to continuously improve. Failure is acceptable, as we don't always get it right first time, and improvement becomes part of the organizational DNA, and the culture change from continuously reviewing things so that you can continuously improve. We need to use what we learn to improve the whole organization, celebrate success. And when people see people having fun, they say, they want to lean in and say, I'd like to at least have a look at what you're doing. And continually injecting tension into our daily work. This might sound like a strange bullet, but introducing faults into the system can increase resilience. In the Google Site Reliability Engineering book, they talk about how they actually took away systems deliberately to see if people had built dependencies on systems that weren't federated anywhere, so people didn't do it. I think there's some stuff around chaos engineering where you can do things to see what happens. And the retailer Etsy is infamous for the fact that in week one, if you join as an engineer, you are almost required to release code into production in that first week. And if it gets deployed into prod and then causes an issue, they see that as an opportunity to review it and improve it, not blame you. They celebrate the fact you've got there. They want to make sure that their whole process is more resilient for everyone. So it's there to not to be that safety net. So bit of culture. Any transformation has to change the culture, I believe, as well as process and technology. So let's talk about a couple of things. One I mentioned was the psychological safety. And this phrase was coined by someone, Amy Edmondson, and it conveys how important it is for an employee to feel safe about highlighting issues. And one of the examples of this in manufacturing was the and-on cord on the Toyota production line. And this wasn't, you didn't pull the cord to ask for permission to stop the line. It actually stopped the whole production line in the Toyota factory shop floor. And the first thing that would happen when the and-on cord is pulled is that the team leader comes over and actually goes to see what the issue is. It's not about you saying, oh, I've got a problem. That was unconditional, that they came over and they live by this show me culture. So in a technology setting, maybe if you call out a problem or there's an bend, a team leader will stop what they're doing and actually talk to the person to find out what was happening. And the key point here is that go see mindset removes any preconceived notions or potential bias relating to the problem, that there is a problem. Let me go and have a look and see what support I can offer to the individual that's reported it. And it's fact-based. It's fact-based. It's not, oh, I hear that there's a problem. It's, you're calling it out. Someone calls it out and people go and take a look. And then the second important cultural aspect of the and-on cord at Toyota, was that when the team leader arrived to look at the problem, they thanked the team member for pulling the cord. It wasn't about putting them in, you know, the employees didn't have a fear that pulling the cord would result in retribution for, you know, stopping the overall production line. And then let's talk a little bit about how failure is important, because it can teach us many things about ourselves. When you fall down and pick yourself up, you're building muscle and strength. And similarly, each time you fail and recover, you build strength of character, commitment, and work ethic. And, you know, failure can spawn creativity, motivation, and, you know, tenacity. How am I going to stop this happening again? And even Nelson Mandela's weighed in on this by saying, you know, do not judge me by my successes, judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. And the site reliability engineering, people can now get error budgets, so they actually can be given an amount of time or money to put things into production. And once they've spent all that, they have to then make sure they start fixing things. But there are ways and means of companies encouraging failure, so that helps with that psychological safety and enables innovation. And going back to my favorite book, Sooner Save Habit, John Smart, he went from DevOps practitioner to DevOps evangelist and doing all sorts of things. Alongside that is he helps people and organizations actually do the transformation that he saw at his organization. And there's a picture of a rocket, which is actually a screen grab from one of the SpaceX pictures. Great example of how they haven't allowed failure to hold them back. If anyone knows about it, I'm going to tell a story. So I hope I've got the facts right. That their SN9 iteration planned to go to 10,000 meters in height and then land again. And then they knew the chances of landing were slim. They did get to 10,000 meters, but actually it didn't land. Then the next iteration, SN10, was on the launch pad. It also got up to 10K. It did land, but then it blew up after it landed, you know, after a couple of minutes. They kept trying until the SN15 achieves that expected outcome. And that must have been incredibly expensive, and potentially people could have said, hey, let's stop. But now they've got where they are. There's a real chance that if the requirement is there, that we could get people to Mars as a result. So, you know, an interesting story, I think, about how failure did not hold anyone back. And then talking about thinking differently, this is Werner Vogels from Amazon, and he changed the potential conversation. Instead about you building it and then you throw it over some kind of wall from dev to ops, you build it, you run it. And as an example on these things, one report found that when they talked to companies that were doing code reviews where the code was reviewed by an external team, so not one that was actually involved in the product development, it had exactly the same success rate as companies that did no code review at all. So by getting an external party to review your code was just as successful as not doing anything at all. But when you had a peer, on the other hand, you know, actually from your team who knew the product, that did have a positive impact. So, you know, pair programming, etc. Those techniques, that culture change can bring benefits by introducing them. And on top of that, it's bringing less pressure on the teams, because if you're building, running, and ultimately owning the value stream, then everyone's pulling together. There's no hand or fewer handoffs, more automation, more collaborative thinking, and people get design with production in mind, because they're going to have to look after it. They're going to it's been proven that there are quicker response times, because everyone understands the application thoroughly. You don't have to look for one subject matter expert that may be on leave or busy doing something else. And people are going to test code more thoroughly, because it's going to avoid them getting called out at 1 o'clock in the morning to potentially resolve a bug. They're going to think about, I love my sleep over being called out. So let's make sure this stuff is resilient and potentially can recover itself or can terminate gracefully. So a simple thing that perhaps sometimes gets lost as some of us are working remotely. I know that there are companies like ours, Marcus and mine, we're returning to office. So that's going to be a real positive. But let's not forget about dev and or DevOps. Ops can do some talking to dev too. If they're provisioning infrastructure capacity, Dan was talking about some of the stuff that Ansible can do. When mainframes get upgraded and program language such as code will get upgraded, more compile options come to help with improving the efficiency of code with instructions. So if dev are made aware that there's a new compile option, they can make changes. And this is actually a real world example of how the latest hardware went from a CPU usage of that with no optimization to a significantly reduced CPU usage based on having compile options. So get the value out of upgrading the hardware, and ops can help by telling dev that these features are available. So that's it really, other than talking about how ops should be looking at the devs backlog. Maybe they can help out with that and keep talking to each other from all phases of the software delivery lifecycle. And I don't know, I know that Rose has been a product manager for a couple of things. I don't know if Rose has got anything to add about the value of bringing together the teams and the collaboration, on how much more efficient. I know that Broadcom went to delivering code when it was ready, rather than those really long delivery cycles that we used to have on software, that it might be 18 months between releases. And now they had, they went to an incremental thing. IBM do the same with PTFs when it's ready. Mana Waller and her team get it out to ZOS users as soon as they can. So there you go. If I'm on LinkedIn, all the social media, Twitter, and there's my email if you've got any questions. I'm happy, Marcus, to make the deck available in a PDF format to attendees if anyone wants it, if anyone.
Fabulous. Thanks very much, Stuart. That's excellent presentation. And if any of our presenters would like to submit a PDF of their presentation, that can be uploaded to the Slack channel, which is here, and I will share my screen. Mainframers Meetup .slack.com, hashtag general or channel general.
Perhaps we could post it in the chat.
Yep.
That would be great.
See if I can do that. Copy link. There you go.
Awesome, thank you.
This has been a really interesting and informative and fun session. Please fill in the form. Where are we? There we go. Please fill in the survey to let us know what you thought. That way we can make things better and we can address issues that you want to know more about, and it'll help us to improve the next session. So Beth's just put the link up on the meeting chat. Please click on the survey and let us know. Thanks for joining. It's 7 o'clock British Summer Time. Thank you very much, and we shall see you soon. Thanks everyone for presenting.
Thanks,
Councillor John.
Marcus. Bye for now.